Hi everyone, Donut here, and today we're going to have a special video. It's not going to be too visually appealing. I'm not going to play any videos. I just wanted to tell you a story about Sacramento County Sheriff Deputy Robert French, aka Bob, or Bob the Badass, or Bob the Beast. Bob was killed on August 30th the other day in a firefight with a suspect who had an AK-47. Now the reason I want to do a story about Bob is because Bob is a hero, and I don't think any of the newspaper articles are doing him any justice. My friend Deputy Matt over at thosewhoserve.com personally knew Bob. Deputy Matt wrote a nice big article. That's what I'm going to be reading today, the story of what happened to Bob on August 30th. Deputy Matt, the person who wrote this article, has been a sheriff's deputy in California for 18 years. You should check out his YouTube. He knows way more about policing and firearms and things like that than I do. But on with the story of Bob. On August 30th, detectives were going to contact a hotel room related to an earlier stolen vehicle. The room was supposed to be unoccupied with only some physical evidence inside to be recovered. Deputy Bob French was one of the deputies on that call. Bob was in his car and was positioned 2 businesses to the east. He was the only cop in a car at the time and was in position in case one of the stolen vehicle suspects, who might possibly be at the hotel, made it to a car and fled. As detectives attempted to enter the supposedly empty hotel room, the suspect inside opened fire with a handgun through the hotel room door and walls, striking 2 CHP officers, injuring one seriously and the other not quite as bad. So right now we have a suspect on the other side of the wall shooting at 2 CHP officers outside. One of them is seriously injured, so they need to GTFO. The injured CHP officers and one other Sacramento deputy fled to the stairwell and began to head to the parking lot to be evacuated to the hospital for medical treatment. All of this was broadcast via the radio, and additional resources began heading to the scene, including Bob. At that time, the suspect in the room, who was now armed with a folded stock AK, started to flee out of the back of the room onto the balcony. One solo Sacramento County deputy was on the back side of the hotel at that time. That deputy, who was armed only with his handgun, engaged the suspect in a firefight that lasted more than a minute. The deputy was miraculously not hit, but everything around him was shredded by the oncoming rounds fired by the suspect. The suspect, realizing the deputy was not going to disengage, managed to get to the ground and flee east, the same direction the other deputy went as he evacuated the 2 wounded CHP officers. While the firefight was occurring, Bob had driven his car from the location down the street to the front of the hotel. As he parked, the deputy and the 2 wounded CHP officers exited the building and ran towards Bob. As they reached Bob's car, one of the wounded officers started to get into the rear seat of his car. Bob told them to head to the evacuating deputy's car, which was a few feet away, so that Bob could watch their backs. So now you have the 2 CHP officers, one wounded seriously, and the deputy who just engaged in a firefight with a suspect for over a minute, coming towards Bob. Bob said, "You guys can GTFO. I'm going to watch your back." As they ran from Bob's car to the other car a few feet away, the suspect emerged from the same location from whence the injured cops had just come. As he exited, he saw the cops and immediately engaged them with his AK. Bob stepped forward and returned the favor with his AR, causing the suspect to slow and redirect his fire at Bob. Bob continued to engage the suspect in a firefight for a short while as he used the rear corner of his patrol vehicle as cover. During this time, the deputy who evacuated the wounded CHP officer sped off to the hospital with the more serious of the wounded cops. Other units arrived and also engaged the suspect. One of those responding units was positioned behind Bob and perfectly captured the ensuing firefight on the in-car camera system. Now that video has not been released yet, but as soon as it is released, I'll be sure and put it on here for everyone to see. During the gun battle, one of the suspect's rounds hit the window of Bob's car and ricocheted, sending a large fragment of the bullet into Bob's shoulder between the top edges of the vest and panels. That bullet fragment somehow missed all of the bones and went directly to Bob's heart, entering his left ventricle. Even if a trauma surgeon was on scene and started working on Bob at this point, Bob would not have made it. So now Bob's mortally wounded and he's still in a firefight against a guy with an AK-47. That fact did not stop Bob though. He shook it off, likely not realizing how badly he was injured, and re-engaged the suspect, who was just getting into a car at this time. As the suspect fled through the parking lot, he continued firing his weapon at the officers, and Bob returned fire. As the suspect fled through the parking lot, he continued firing his AK-47 at the officers. Bob and the other officers returned fire. The suspect, who was later identified as 32-year-old Thomas Daniel Littlecloud, later died from his wounds received in the firefight. Once the suspect left the parking lot, Bob walked back up to the front of his car. At this point, it appears, at least from the video, that Bob realizes he is seriously injured. Bob, being the calm, seasoned cop that he was, dropped the magazine out of his rifle, cleared the chamber, and returned the rifle to the gun lock in his car. He sat down, then fell to the pavement. At this time, one of the deputies on scene ran to him. In typical, calm Bob fashion, with his chew still in his cheek, Bob provided a suspect and suspect vehicle description. As he lay on the ground waiting for medical help to arrive, again in typical Bob fashion, he told one of the cops there with him, "Hurry up and move me, the goddamn asphalt is hot." Deputy Matt says Bob was talking up to the end and only spit his chew out once he got in the ambulance. Bob, being the tough bastard he was, lived for 10 minutes after receiving a non-survivable wound. Bob, thank you for your service and sacrifice. Deputy Bob is survived by his 3 adult children, grandchildren, and girlfriend. He was with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department for 21 years. Anyways, guys, that's my whole video for today. I thought it was a really cool story, and it deserved its own video. As I said, Deputy Matt is an extremely knowledgeable person when it comes to policing and firearms and the Second Amendment. So go ahead and check out his Facebook page, YouTube channel, and his blog. I'll put those links in the comments below. Everyone, this is Donut. I have a really good video coming tomorrow. I think you'll all enjoy it. Please have a fantastic Tuesday.